Israel's cover-up of Nazis for nukes, Part 2.
Hey, what about Major Kong?
Using the work of Israeli historians, Part 1 related the Jewish state's cover-up of Nazis for nukes from West Germany, especially during the 1961 Eichmann trial. Part 2 is largely based on New York Times, BBC, and other news media sources, which verify my struggle in 1979-1980 to reveal the Jewish state's satanic defense of those who murdered 6 million of their people, but also how Israel blackmailed Austrian UN Secretary-General Kurt Waldheim, who had served in Hitler's army in World War II. There are no end of incredible coincidences in this story, including my meeting in 1979-1980 in New York with two of the key figures in the cover-up of Nazis at the Eichmann trial, which is verified by Israel's top journalist, Tom Segev. One of these Israeli protectors of Nazis at the Eichmann trial threatened my life. While doing research in World War II war crimes, I blundered into one of history's biggest cover-ups. Those keeping the secrets weren't much better morally than the war criminals they were protecting. Indeed, Frank Olson, who the CIA feared would expose Axis war criminals, got pushed out of a hotel window by mafia guys working for the CIA. At the outset, in 1979, I was researching Italian atrocities in Yugoslavia in World War II, which in 1989 would become the 2-hour BBC documentary Fascist Legacy. In pursuit of Italian war criminals, I read that files of the UN War Crimes Commission were missing. I reasoned there had to be a record of these files in the UN library. Ironically, I got the index to the files in the UN library by posing as an aide to Secretary-General Kurt Waldheim without knowing that there was a war crime file on Waldheim in the UN archives. Incredible, no? When I got the index, it was obvious someone was being covered up. This was a life-changing or a life-ending moment for me. As confirmed by Tom Segev in his article, Did We Blackmail Waldheim? In order to get into the UN war crime files in 1979, I went for help from the Israeli UN mission, where I met the chief legal expert of the Jewish state, Shabtai Rozan, who just happened to be in New York. Shabtai Rozan had played a key role in the Eichmann trial, where so many Nazis were covered up. I also met Gideon Hausner, the chief prosecutor of the Eichmann trial, who also just happened to be in New York. Of course, these two guys gave me no help getting into the UN archive. Indeed, Tom Segev confirms there were constant rumors at the Israeli UN legation about Waldheim's past. Obviously, Rozan and Hausner were concerned about my exposing the cover-up of Nazis for nukes at the Eichmann trial, as well as possibly me exposing Israel's blackmailing of Waldheim. Indeed, in the U.S. National Archives, in captured German documents, I found German reports of Italian atrocities signed by Lieutenant Waldheim. If these documents had been signed Kurt Waldheim, I would have realized he was the guy being covered up in the UN war crimes files, and somebody probably would have had to cover up my body in the morgue. On March 28, 1980, the New York Times published a half-page article on my discovery of the secret UN war crime files. I got 2 phone calls from Israeli war crimes expert Shabtai Rozan, who was livid with rage that my story would unravel numerous war crime cover-ups. Gideon Hausner, the prosecutor at the Eichmann trial, admitted to top journalist Tom Segev he had spoken to me in New York, but he was so tight-lipped about details that Tom Segev suspected a cover-up. The Israeli journalist wrote, direct quote, "The prosecution of war criminals was never one of Israel's top priorities. Much was said about it, but little was done. Much was done by Israel to cover up Nazis, however." Indeed, Shabtai Rozan went OTT when he called me a few days later after I revealed the existence of the UN war crime files. Rozan took a dire tone with me, saying in a sinister voice, We know where you are. I didn't want to become a dead hero like Frank Olson, who was murdered on orders from the CIA. I got interested in another project. In the UN archives, I found UN observer reports of the expulsion of the Palestinians from their homes in what became the State of Israel during the 1948 war. It was this expulsion of Palestinians which created the refugee problem and the enmity of the entire Arab world, which necessitated the Jewish state's acquisition of nukes, as explained in Part 4 of this series. But first, in Part 3, we examine the role of Benjamin Netanyahu in thwarting my research in Israel's cover-up of Nazis in 1986. Hey guys, keep those subscriptions coming, but to get my book published, I also need likes and comments. With a little help from you, I can get all manner of forbidden knowledge revealed. Thanks.